So we've covered the basics of the user interface and how we might customize it a little bit. But beyond that, I think it's worth talking about a few of the options that you might want to change right away in AutoCAD. So if we go up to the application button, we can go down to the very bottom here to find options. And this will open up just a whole series of menus, and there's a lot that you can change in CAD. But the big one for people, and I think it's really worth talking about right away, is display. Okay. For display, the first one that always seems a little bit superficial to me, but for some people it really matters, is the color scheme. So we can choose between dark, which I currently have, or light. If I say apply down at the bottom of this menu, it will keep that menu open, but allow me to see the changes. So here, the light system will have a medium gray background on things like the ribbon, and then the text is in black here. If I say dark and apply, so you can see it, that will be a very, very deep charcoal gray with white text. So it just depends on your eyes and what looks good to you. We also have things below the window elements here, like displaying scroll bars in the drawing window. Those are these items on the right and the bottom, and some people really like to use the scroll bars to navigate around their drawing. But as I mentioned, sometimes your screen real estate can be very limited. So if you want to increase the space, if you just uncheck that, I could hit apply, that opens up a little bit more space. So maybe I'll leave those off. We also have things like, do we want to see the drawing status bar or not? Do we want to use large or small buttons? We can resize the ribbon and so on. So you can basically, modify every little thing. I think the most important one right here in this area is the showing of the tooltips and how you want to see them. So the tooltips, if I just say OK for now, are these items. So when I hover over a button, like let's say I hover over the word circle here, this tool, you'll see that I get a smaller and then a larger little screen. So I'm going to get away from that for a second and come back. So the first one gives me what the tool is, the specifics of it, and how you would type in the command. If I hold it over just a little longer, it will give me a drawing of what that might look like, a little demo about it. So if I go back into options, we'll see that, do I want to see them at all or not? So I could just turn those off entirely. So once you get comfortable with CAD, you might find that those kind of get in your way a little bit, and you could just turn them off. But when you're new to it, I really recommend leaving them on because they can be really helpful. So we can say, do we want to show the shortcut in the tooltips? And then do we want to see the extended one? So do we want to see the short one, the longer one with the picture, or both? And then you can say how long is the delay. So you really have, a lot of options there. We can also, come down longer and say, do I want to show the rollover tooltips? And I think those can be really handy. And then finally, what about colors and fonts? So if I click on colors, this gets into the colors of essentially every element in your user interface, and this one can be very important to people. Notice over here under context, we can be dealing with 2D model space, and that's what we're doing right now. We can deal with the sheet layout. Remember, that's when you're printing. Then what things look like in 3D, the block editor, your command line, and your plot preview. So there's a lot of options here. So we're going to stay in 2D model space right now. And then within that, we can change the color of all of these items. The first one that people care about the most would be the background. So the default background in AutoCAD is this deep, deep gray color. And sometimes I just call it black, but it's really this deep gray. Some people don't like that. Some people prefer to work on a white background, like they're drawing on a piece of paper, for example. So if I wanted to do that, I could say white, apply and close. And notice if I just move that now my drawing area is white and my line work is black. If I go back into colors, in my 2D model space, my uniform background, I can go back in and pick a different color, I could say magenta, for example, apply and close. I don't know why you'd want to work in that, but maybe somebody does. Or I could say restore current element, and that will apply that gray again. Or I could say restore them all to the defaults. So I'll say apply and close, and that's getting me back there. You can change the color of everything. So you can change the background, the crosshairs that you're drawing with, and so on. So if anything ever kind of disappears, looks weird to you, you can go into those colors. You can also change the fonts, how things are displaying. So if the current font is a little bit difficult for you to read, you could go in and make adjustments to that as well. Below those basic window elements, which I think really gets to the core of what people want to change initially, we have the layout elements. And earlier I had mentioned those layout and model tabs. That's these right here. So if you don't want those, you can simply uncheck that. Or if they somehow disappear on you, you can't find them, that's how you turn them back on. We can also change, if we're looking at a piece of paper in that print layout and so on. Over here you'll see that we can change things about our resolution. So that would be, for example, how smooth our circles and arcs are. So that, we might change if we get into a more complicated drawing or if things look too jagged. Below that we have crosshair size. The default is 5. So the crosshair, if I just say, okay, the default is 5. That's what that looks like. That's a very standard way of looking at the crosshairs on our screen. Some people, I think it just depends on the kind of work you do, like to make those bigger or smaller. And I just like to point out what that's like. So if I just make this all the way to 100, the max, and I'll say okay, it looks like this. Some people really like to work this way, and there's nothing wrong with that, it's fine. But if you're in a shared computer environment, for example, that might, what one person really enjoys, the next person might go crazy. So you can just come and change that. And that's simply under display and then crosshair. I'll just take that back down to 5, but you can change that. As we're looking at this, you might be wondering, why do a few of these items have these little AutoCAD symbols next to it and some don't? Take note that's explained at the top. So all of these items, when I'm changing the color scheme, the color of my background, the crosshairs, that's changing the basic interface for CAD. So whenever I open it, that's how it's going to be unless I go and change it. These items, such as display resolution, performance, and a few other things, will only change for this one particular drawing. So if I open up a new drawing, I would have to go in and change those again. But the rest of these would stay the same. Beyond the display tab, the next most important one would be the opening and saving tab. So first of all, you'll see save as here. It's going to save as a 2013 drawing, a .dwg. If I click on that, we can change so that it automatically would want to save as a 2010 or 7 or 4 or whatever type of file. You're probably not going to do that in here, but you do have the option. We can change the thumbnail preview size here, but more importantly, below that we can change if it automatically saves and how often. So if I don't have automatic save checked, it will only save when I tell it to. But if I check this, it gives me a little bit of a safety net so that if I forget to save my file for a while and AutoCAD shuts down or something like that, it will have done a backup recover save for me. So the interval between there is really up to you. So you could have it, an hour, or you could have it 5 minutes. It's totally up to you. And that's a little bit, it's a little tricky. You have to decide how important this backup save is to you, how forgetful you might be, and how much work are you willing to lose. So I think sometimes around 10 or 15 minutes is nice, but AutoCAD does have to stop and think for a minute, so sometimes it can be a little disruptive. So, that's really up to you, but I really encourage you to have some type of automatic save. It will really help you later. All right. Another one that you might find useful right away, and the last one I'm going to talk about right now, is user preferences. It's just a few over. And this is where you'll see things like how your mouse might work. So here we have right-click customization, and I encourage you to take a look at this, because when we're working in CAD, your computer could be working a little bit differently than mine. So for example, the default mode, if no objects are selected on our screen, what does right-click mean? That I want a menu to appear, or I just automatically want to repeat my last command? That's a very significant difference. Or if I'm editing, do I just want to repeat the last command or actually have a menu appear, and so on. So as you're working, you might discover you want to go in and change that from one to the other because it's a very different experience when you're using the software. So before we continue, definitely go in and make some adjustments so that the user interface and the way the colors are interacting and all of that are comfortable for you, at least as much as they can be right now.